Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Knowmads Podcast. I'm your co host, Prachi.
And I'm your co-host, Bhavya.
Whether you're a parent searching for that delicate equilibrium between responsibilities and aspirations, or someone looking for a force of motivation to go back to school, or simply someone seeking a tale of inspiration, you're in for a treat. From her humble beginnings serving tirelessly for a non-profit organization in the vibrant heart of Latin America, to the classrooms where she ignited minds as an educator, and now juggling between being a grad student and a mother. Today's guest is Kristen Dobbs, whose journey has been a tapestry of inspiration. This is a beautiful conversation where we talk about her challenges and the invaluable lessons she's gathered along the way. So, let's go. Kristen Dobbs, welcome to the Knowmads Podcast.
Thank you.
So let's start with where it all started. So you've been a teacher for most of your life, and could you talk about this journey from being a full-time teacher to a graduate student, and perhaps also talk about the moment you realized that you want to start graduate school?
Well, excuse me. It is a little bit more complicated than that. I actually worked for a while in Latin America doing nonprofit work that had nothing to do with my degree in physics.
All right.
So I actually didn't come back to the States until 2008 maybe. So I was 28, 29. So I spent quite a bit of time in Latin America. And then when I came back, I was actually still trying to go the nonprofit route, and I was working on my master's degree in urban education, urban studies, which again has nothing to do with science. But when I lived in Latin America, I became really concerned with just the social injustices that I kind of wasn't aware of as a younger person. And so I actually wrote my thesis on human sex trafficking. Wow. And I moved to Houston specifically because it's a major port city for traffickers. You have people coming in from, I-10 actually is the major trafficking route from Texas all the way, I think, to California. Wow. So I moved to Houston just to finish my dissertation work and to try to get a job in the space. Mm-hmm. And while I was doing it, I needed to pay the bills. So I got a job as it wasn't even a substitute teacher, like a hourly lecturer at a high school, teaching math. And so for my interview, and I haven't done math in like 6 or 7 years at this point, right? Mm-hmm. And so in my interview, she brought me into a pre-cal class, and they were doing a bunch of trig proofs on the board. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't remember any of this. And then she asked me to she was like, Miss Dobbs, would you like to go up and finish this proof? And I was like trying to memorize all the identities on the fly. And then so I actually took that job just to pay the bills. And then in the process, I defended my thesis and I graduated, and I was kind of trying to get a job still in that space. But I kind of fell in love with teaching. And so I decided to kind of put the nonprofit on pause, and I got my teaching certification and started teaching physics. So I just haven't always done it.
Right. That's so interesting.
So yeah, but then when I did start teaching, I really like working with kids, and I love physics. So I taught for a while. We moved to DC after a little bit. So I started teaching there, and teaching in DC was really fun because we didn't have all the standardized tests that we have in Texas. So I could really control my curriculum. And what I would do is spend kind of the first half of the year teaching mostly mechanics, a little bit of circuits. And then the second half of the year, we would build a one-passenger electric vehicle and then race it with a bunch of high school, competing against different high schools in DC. And that was really a really fun experience. So along the way, I got to teach some of the AP physics and AP calculus. And then we moved back to Houston. And that was kind of the shift for me, where I had curated this job that I really enjoyed. And then shifting back to Texas, it's just a different job. And I don't know how much we can cut some of this out, but you're teaching 180 students. You're teaching, from 7:30 to 4:30. There's almost zero flexibility with when can I see my kids and can I ever pick them up from school? And I just decided that's not compatible with kind of the way that I want to be a mom. So, and I'd always kind of had it in the back of my mind that I'd like to get an advanced degree in physics. And the truth is, in my bachelor's, I didn't think I was smart enough. I just thought it's over my head and I'm barely surviving and I can't do it. And then as a teacher, you kind of realize if you are willing to put in the time, I can do it. And I might have to work harder than other people. But that doesn't matter if I'm willing to do it. So I applied when we moved here. I applied to the University of Houston. I think it was the year before COVID. So I studied. I wasn't working. I took the GRE. I had studied for the physics GRE, and then COVID happened and everything shut down. So I didn't have a GRE score to send to U of H. So all I had was my transcripts from 20 years ago and a very mediocre GRE, and they just flat out rejected me, right? Like no interview, nothing. And I was like, okay, let's regroup. I'll shorten the story a little bit. The next year, I asked if I could audit some classes so that I could kind of get back in the mindset of physics, get to know some professors. I also couldn't find letters of recommendation because I literally didn't know any professors anymore, except one. And everyone else, like I couldn't, how do you find a professor from 20 years ago if they've retired and you haven't kept in touch? So I audited a couple classes, applied again, had another interview. And in my interview, I remember them asking me the difference between a Lagrangian and a Hamiltonian. And I was auditing statistical mechanics, which doesn't really talk about any of those things. And I was like, the energy, something with, and they were both like, I don't know, there seems like a lot you need to catch up with. So what we agreed on was I wasn't ready to start the program. And so they agreed to kind of let me take graduate level classes, but not be admitted. And then, if I could make a B or above in the classes, then I could apply again. So the third time I applied with some grades under my belt and some letters of recommendation. And then 4 years later, I am now starting my PhD.
Wow, that's a journey.
That was a long answer.
But we've touched on a lot of things here, so I would want to backtrack a little bit. Yeah. So your work in Latin America, was it strictly part of your master's thesis, or was it more volunteer work? You wanted to go there and
no, it was they were completely separate. It's just that while I was there, the nonprofit that I was working with kind of had a joint program with a small liberal arts school in Philadelphia. Okay. So I decided to do it while I was there because I had a lot of flexibility.
Right.
Right. What was the exact moment that you decided, because you mentioned that you started liking physics and you wanted to get a degree, but I'm sure that there's some difference between wanting to get a degree and then finally deciding, okay, I'm going to get it. So what exactly caused that?
I mean, I think, like you said, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons, and it's kind of always in the back of my mind. Honestly, I think it was, at that point in time, I had just had my third kid, and I love being a mom, but that's not all of who I am. And like I said, the kind of mom that I wanted to be, it was just not compatible with leaving at 7 every morning and not ever seeing them in the morning and never being able to pick them up from school. And so I needed like a reset. And also I just wanted to try because like I said, in my undergrad, I didn't think I could do it. And it was also a different space. Like I went to a small Christian, very conservative university. And we'll just say that 20 years ago, most of the women there were not going to study science. Right. So I was the only woman in the building. There were no female professors, there were no female students in the physics degree program. And I think I just internalized that a little bit because I also struggled. And once I got married, my husband is also a PhD in a different field. And I started to kind of meet some of his friends and colleagues. And I was like, you guys are not that much smarter than me. I feel like I could do this. So honestly, just meeting real people that had advanced degrees and were in the field and also didn't know everything, but they just kept trying. That idea of you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but if I'm willing to try and not give up.
Right.
So I just finally decided I just want to try and see what I can. And if I fail, I fail. But then I know, So, yeah.
That's a very interesting approach. So it was like the way you explained it was very organic, the way you met a lot of people. And then you sort of, you understood that you also wanted to, try and see where it leads you. But let's talk about, you getting married. This was back in undergrad?
Oh, no.
After undergrad?
After I lived in Latin America. So I came back, I moved to Houston.
Okay.
I was writing my thesis. And I think I'd already become a teacher, actually.
Okay.
And I met my husband while he was actually still working on his PhD.
Oh.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So you had a completely different life before joining the program. And not just officially joining, but started taking classes. So, and you were already a mom before that. What was your family's reaction when you told them that I'm going to start school now?
See, that is interesting because my kids, when they were all born, I worked full time, but they don't remember because they were so little, right? And my husband was very supportive. He was super excited, and he's my biggest fan. My kids, when we moved to Houston, I stopped working, and I was just studying and applying and getting rejected and auditing courses. So my schedule was very, very flexible. And then when I started the program, I do remember at one point, all my kids will make comments about when am I going to get a real job and why don't I make any money? And I'm like, you just don't remember. I used to make more than your dad until we moved here. And my daughter will often say things like, if there's a schedule conflict and I can't make a meeting and my husband goes instead or something, and she'll say things like, well, I just don't understand why you have to work and why you have to go back to school instead of be a teacher, because then you would be with us more. Which isn't true. And so I have to remind her, like, you just don't remember. If I were a teacher, your dad would take you to school every day. I would never see you in the morning. I would never be able to pick you up from school. You would go to after, which is fine. When we lived in DC, they went to aftercare every day, and I picked them up at 4:30 or 5. But she just doesn't remember that. And so now an older kid and seeing, sometimes other moms are at school more or and I still try to pick them up 2 or 3 days a week. I really like that. But so I have to explain to them, like, the reason I am doing this is in part because it does offer me more flexibility. I can come get you, and then I can go work at night after you go to sleep, or while I'm at gymnastics practice, I can be grading papers or something. So it is interesting that their perception of what's happening isn't the full picture, because they were just little when, before, and they don't remember.
Yeah.
How old are they now?
Now they're 9, 7, and 4.
Oh,
wow.
Okay. So now they actually remember that, hey, you're not around that much, and
Right.
hence the comments.
Right. Exactly. Things are different, this year, and even last year they were a little different than they had been the couple years before. But no, it's just funny. And then when I say it like that, my daughter will say, well, okay. I guess that is better.
But let's try to understand when you took the decision. So what were your thoughts when you were starting grad school or about to start grad school? And this is, you can talk about, when you started auditing these courses, and then the fact that you decided to spend some time away from family, and then you're going to try this new career path. So what were your thoughts then? And now that you've become a PhD student, you've been taking classes. So when you started auditing, were you scared? What were your thought process?
I remember the first class I audited was undergrad statistical mechanics with Dr. Barato. And I remember the first day sitting there just thinking, I don't understand a single thing that he's writing. I know what an integral sign means, and that's it. And so it felt a little bit like, I don't know how I don't know how this is going to work. But I had committed to trying. And so and because I was auditing, I wasn't really getting a grade. And so I did the homeworks, and I did go to class. But then I remember the first test, I did sit for the test and take it, even though I don't think I submitted it. I just took it for myself and then reviewed the solutions, and I did really poorly. So I remember talking actually to my husband, and we were just talking about study strategies. And so I kind of changed a little bit of what I do. And so after I get home from class, and I remember sitting in class every day, not understanding truly a single thing that he was writing. And I would go home and recopy the notes, and then ask him, if I had questions, and then recopy again and again if I needed to. And it was a lot of time. And like I said before, I don't know that every student has to put in that much time, but it worked for me. And when I kind of realized that, it was very powerful, and it was kind of the encouragement I needed. I think that was when I sat for the final in his class, I knew I could do it. And I knew it was a lot of time. And that part, I was grateful actually that the next year when they let me start the graduate program kind of part-time, I only had 2 classes to take. I knew I couldn't do 3 classes at once and TA and be a mom. But with the 2 classes, and I was able to take the time and recopy and recopy. And each time I do it, it in turn, it's not memorizing so much as like truly understanding what I'm finally doing. And sometimes it takes 3 times, but I know that that's true now. So now when I go to class, like in mechanics, I might not understand exactly what he's doing on the board, but it doesn't scare me anymore. I'm not worried about not finishing the program or not being able to do it. I just know I have to go home and put in the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's very nice. So why did you choose UFH? Is there a particular reason for that?
Well, first and foremost, we're not leaving Houston. My kids have started school, and I don't want to move for kind of, and my husband's job is here. So really the options were U of H or Rice. And U of H was so generous and flexible with me about being able to kind of start part-time and being open to me as a very atypical applicant. So it was just kind of the only choice that made sense because they were so accommodating.
Did you have any correspondence with Rice though? Like
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I'm sure when you started UFH, you had some expectations for the department. Did the department meet those expectations?
In terms of an atypical applicant.
Like the support that you wanted or were looking for, were they accommodating?
On an individual professor level, I would say absolutely. I've been so pleased with the way that professors are accessible, either in person or over Teams. And I use office hours a lot. I have a policy that I go once a week, even if I don't think I have questions, because I do have questions. And so I've been very thankful for how open everybody has been. Or even just, sending quick emails about clarifying things and the quick responses. So I do feel like everyone has been very accommodating. Or if I have a sick kid and I can't come to class and they're willing to record a lecture or accept my homework the next day. So I appreciate that because sometimes those things happen and more often with 3 kids.
That's true.
So, of course, balancing graduate school and motherhood can be incredibly challenging. Could you share us a typical day in your life?
Sorry. Yes. So my day starts at 4:30.
Wow.
I get up and I go to the gym from 5 to 6. My husband and I go to a gym where there's like classes. So I go to the 5 a.m. class and I leave 5 minutes early so I can get home. And he's waiting in his car in front of the house. And when I pull in, he pulls out so that he can go to the 6 o'clock class because we don't want to leave the kids alone. So then I get home and I get ready, and I actually do try to spend, sometimes it's even just like 10 or 15 minutes, just being like sitting and being still and holding a cup of coffee. It's like the only quiet time I have in the day, and it's super valuable to me. And then about 7, the kids start getting up, or I have to forcibly remove them from their beds. So we get the kids ready. I am usually out the door with one of the kids, because they go to 2 different schools, at about 7:45. So I drop him off and then come here. So then I'm usually on campus by, about 8:15, 8:30. And then I try to stay here and just focus every second of my time until I leave. So 2 or 3 days a week, I try to leave by 2:30 so that I can make it to school to pick up all the kids and spend the afternoon with them. And then at least 2 days a week, we have a nanny that comes and gets the kids, and so I stay late. So those are usually the afternoons that we have meetings or whatever. And I just, again, I try to hide in my little corner in the TA room and just get as much work done as possible. So then whenever I get home, the kids, all of them have different activities. So it is the most amazing Tetris puzzle of the 2 boys play soccer 3 times a week at different times. My daughter does gymnastics and dance at different times. They all take music lessons. And so every night of the week is like this crazy dance between my husband and the nanny and I that just take turns shuffling the kids around. And then at some point, we just like lock them in their room and say, please go to sleep. And that is usually about 8 o'clock. And a lot of times I will go to bed right after they do at 8 o'clock.
Obviously.
You have to.
I'm exhausted.
There's no, exactly.
A lot of times I'll get some extra work done too when they're like at gymnastics practice while, I can like sit there and do some work. But my brain is not super functional by that point. So I'm hoping that can be like a grading time, and hopefully I can at least manage to grade papers. But yeah, that's the typical day.
My God.
What do you think is the most important, thing that you need in your life to juggle all these responsibilities?
Oh, how do you say one thing? There are a lot of things I do to take care of my mental health. Probably, I think number one is just like a sense of my community. So that is primarily my husband, and then my, small group of friends. That is very important to me. The 15 minutes I take for myself in the morning of just being quiet with a cup of coffee is really important to me. I love to run, so that is also a big part of not just something for me, but my mental health. So I would say those are kind of the big pieces. Yeah.
And what is something that keeps you motivated? Because I'm sure sometimes, whatever circumstances you're in, you once in a while you think that I don't want to do this. This is not worth it. But there's always something that keeps you going.
Yeah, I think that for me, I don't know, this is not super profound in any way, but especially being in school with, most of our peers are 25 to 30 years old. And there's a lot of this like, I need to get done in 4 years. I've got to get out in 5 years. To me, it is a really arbitrary timeline. I do not care how long it takes. The University of Houston might have some opinions on how long it takes me to graduate. But I guess for me, when I have those moments that I'm like, why am I doing this? I kind of think about, in 10 years, I will wake up one day and I can either have a PhD and be teaching as a university professor or not. The time is going to pass regardless. And so instead of trying to get all caught up in the details and being overwhelmed, like what do I have to do today? Like keep on swimming, just like keep moving.
Yeah.
Because, and then when you take a step back, the truth is I do love the work. I love the physics. I love being stuck in a problem and then getting that idea and figuring it out. I love discovering the secrets of the universe, you know, that it's beautiful. And so sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that when you have a test and, you know, a presentation or whatever. But at the end of the day, I want to spend my time doing things that fascinate me and bring me joy. And this work does do that. So
that's nice. I like how you said time's going to pass anyway.
Right.
That's
nice.
So
when did this side sort of take over? When you got interested in the mysteries of the universe and you wanted to you knew that physics was the only way to move towards that?
I mean, very early. You know, I remember taking my first chemistry class and being like, this is very fun. You know, it's entertaining. I like doing the equations or whatever. And then taking the first physics class in high school and just being like, this is awesome. But then you get to college and they're like, well, really, those laws don't apply. You know, they're actually not true. And just like how that blew my mind, and realizing the universe is so complicated and so beautiful, and that there is meaning and joy in uncovering that. So I think that from the time I was 15, I was really interested in this path.
Okay. So time management for you, talking about your diary, do you have a spreadsheet of all of this going on?
Well, a Google Calendar.
Okay.
So
everyone has it.
The shared Google Calendar that early on in my marriage, we realized we cannot rely on just conversations. So you just put everything in the Google Calendar. That's the secret.
So what are the qualities of being a mother that you think has helped you in your journey navigating through grad school?
Oh, great question. I think time management is one of them that I think parents in general, but...
Does it come very naturally to you?
I think maybe being a mom, really, especially being a working mom from the beginning, really helped me just figure out that every second counts. Just maximizing every single second of time. So because I had been doing that for a long time, I think it's just kind of second. It's just easy for me to be like, here. When I'm here, I'm here. And I know you guys see me in my little corner, and I am just there, and I am, you know. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is I am not going to waste time during the day, and I'm not, you know, when I was 25, I was playing, this dates me. When I started college, the one game everyone had on their computer was Tetris. You know, we didn't have iPhones or cell phones even. So I spent a lot of time playing Tetris. And I just can't even fathom a universe where I would spend time playing Tetris right now, you know, or any game. And that's not to be critical. It's just a different phase of life.
Yeah.
So I can make the most of my time. That's probably the biggest asset.
What aspects of your family dynamics were affected the most when you made the decision to come back to grad school?
Yeah. I think probably the balance. It shifted from when I was working before full time. My husband and I, 50-50 split all the non-paid work is what I'll call it. And then when we moved to Houston, and I was staying home and just trying to get ready for the GRE, but I didn't have a job. Then I kind of took on all the unpaid work, which made sense to me if one of the partners isn't working full time. So then as I shifted into going to school, it was kind of like handing back some of these jobs that I had taken, like, I need you to do this much laundry, and I need you to cook dinner 2 nights a week. And it was kind of this slow process to kind of get us back to like a 50-50 place. And then at this point, our kids are 4 or 5 years older than they were when we left. And so now we kind of were like, well, we can't do it all by ourselves anymore. So we definitely outsource way more than we used to. So that's another big one. Just the idea of outsourcing the things that don't necessarily bring you joy and that don't take away from quality time with the kids. Otherwise, the numbers don't just add up.
So talking about finances, I'm sure the moment you decided to go to grad school, you must have realized that there's going to be a change in the financial dynamics at your house. So how did that conversation come about, or how do you deal with that? like you were talking about that your children don't remember that you were earning more than their father, and now suddenly they see you in a way that they didn't see you before. So how do you manage that?
Oh, I get so angry. I remember last year my daughter said something like, you talk about women's rights all the time, but you do all the cooking and all. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't remember. That's not. So yeah, it's been. I mean, like I said, now we're kind of moving back to a point where it's a little more 50-50. Can you repeat the actual question again?
Like, how do you deal with the financial dynamics changing?
Yeah. Okay. So, and also it was a shift from before we moved here. I did always make more than my husband. He was a postdoc and made nothing. And then, and yeah, now my kids do see that, dad brings in all the money, and I hate that dynamic, but there's nothing wrong with it at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And so really one of my responses to my daughter is feminism is not about making more money than anyone else. Feminism is about women getting to choose the path that they want that works for them. And for me, that path right now is a balance between pursuing something I love and also getting to spend the time I want to with my kids. And, they're at an age where I want to be really present. It doesn't mean I want to, but I also want to do physics. And so being able to do both is really important to me. And so that is how I'm responding to my daughter. My husband's great. I mean, that dynamic isn't weird for us. Like he doesn't, we just view it as our money. So when I made more, it was just all of our money. And when I made nothing, it was still all our money. So I never felt like it's his money, you know what I mean, that I'm using. It just doesn't feel like that. So it's really just with the kids, their perception. And then one thing, I think the other kind of epiphany I had that I would love my daughter to internalize, and my sons, but I feel like, at my age, I was born in 1980. It depends on what website you go to. My parents are baby boomers is what, we call it in the United States. And so my grandparents, my grandmothers, most of those women kind of didn't have a choice and stayed home with kids. Right. Although my grandmothers both had college degrees, so I'm very proud of that. But they did stay home with kids. And then I feel like my mom's generation, a lot of women did go back to work, but then also did all the unpaid work. And there was no expectation that they would get outside help or that the husbands would help. And I just hope that my generation can kind of swing back to the middle, where, again, women can choose something that they're passionate about that might be outside the family, but also be as present as they want to be with their kids, and that families would find creative ways to make that happen. So that could be both partners contributing equally to unpaid work. It could be outsourcing. It could be, you know what I mean, multi-generational dynamics. But so that's what I'm trying to remind my daughter, that it's not just about how much money you make or if you like to cook or not, which I happen to like to cook. That doesn't mean I'm not a feminist.
Any lifestyle changes that you had to make while with these changing finances?
Well, we eat a lot of rice and beans, which isn't the typical American diet. But my husband and I we've been stretched for money before. So there have been times in our financial life where, think the numbers don't add up. And so when I lived in Latin America, we ate a lot of rice and beans, and I learned how to make lots of meals with them. And so we actually, before kids even, would just, if the numbers aren't adding up, you can make a pot of rice and beans and eat it for a week, and then grocery bills go way down. So we had already kind of learned how to do that. So last semester especially, money was tighter. I wasn't making income and I was paying for tuition. So yeah, just like simple changes, like the typical American diet is eat meat for every meal, and you don't have to do that though, right? So my kids eat actually a lot of Indian cuisine and Thai cuisine and lentils, and we're proud of that too.
That's nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But did your children see these lifestyle changes? What I'm trying to say.
I think they noticed a little bit. They were eating a lot of vegan meals. I mean, I don't think they notice things like, for example, I have to go to the gym at 5 a.m. versus, 9 a.m. Like they're not going to see that. I mean, the biggest thing for them is we did get a nanny, and so that nanny is with them 2 days a week, and they love her. We found, but she's great with the kids and helps them with their math homework, and
interesting.
So she's been a real gift to our family, and so even though that is probably the biggest change they've seen, I think that they've done really well with it and enjoyed it.
Yeah. So you've already gone through the phase of your life of being a college student, being a 25-year-old, and now you're back amongst all other who are going through this phase for the first time. Is there something that you would like for them to know? Like learning from your path, like, you shouldn't be doing this. I did this and I regret it, or you should do this because I did this and it worked out, something like that.
I would say the biggest thing is, like I kind of have mentioned before, trusting your ability to learn anything you want if you put in the time. And just that idea that in class, if it doesn't make sense, well, number one, when you look around the room and see everyone nodding, that does not mean everyone understands at all.
Yes.
Do not ever feel like you're the only one that doesn't get it. It's just not true. It's just not. But then secondly, whatever you don't get, it does not matter if you're willing to put in the time. And so I can't stress enough the idea of like recopying notes. And I don't know what it is about recopying them, and then even homework problems, doing them once you know you have the correct solution, doing them 2 or 3 times as you study for tests. There's something that happens in your brain where you internalize those steps and why you did them, and then you can much more easily apply those to new situations. And I really think, and everyone's brain is different. And like I said, I might have to recopy more times than someone else, but for those problems or topics that are challenging, I think that method works so well, and that if you're just willing to do that, you will learn it, to not think, oh, I can't do it, I'm not smart enough, I'm never going to get that. That's simply not true.
What would you say to someone who is struggling, like you were talking about, struggling with the construct that I have to finish my PhD in 4 years, or otherwise I'm losing time, I don't have enough time to achieve what I want? What do you want to say to someone like that?
I do understand, first of all, if there are financial reasons that we need to finish and start making some serious income. And that is a very real situation. And I appreciate that. However, I do feel like some of that timeline is a bit arbitrary, just in the sense of that's just what I've been told. And if I can finish in 4 instead of 5, then I can get ahead and I can start my postdoc sooner, and then I can start my own lab sooner. And I would just, in my opinion, in 50 years, when you look back, I just don't think you're going to have that many more publications or that many more grant approvals by just trying to destroy yourself to finish in 4 years. If you can finish in 5 or 6 and enjoy it a little bit more, and protect your mental health and your physical health a little bit more, I think that those things are valuable. So yeah.
Now, considering that the initial thought of you starting a PhD was because you wanted to spend more time with your kids, now that you are doing a PhD, do you think it would have been easier if you would have gone through this whole journey before having a family?
I do, in a lot of ways. And even though I say that, I don't regret my path at all. So I would have not wanted to not have gone to Latin America before I got married and do that path. That was like a critical piece of just developing my character and my person. Now, if is there a universe somewhere where I did the PhD right after undergrad? Sure, that would have been great. But then I still would have, how would I still have then gone to Latin America and taken a break and coming back? I kind of don't think I would have, if I had just gone straight into it. I think I probably would have done the postdoc and then, gotten either a job or started a lab. And I think for me, I would have missed out on that piece of my journey that was, I don't regret at all. Yeah. So.
Talking about, you were saying.
No, I was just saying that one thing that a question that came to my mind was when this thought process was when your brain was evolving and you were trying to figure out what am I supposed to do, and then two things I wanted you to sort of linger on is the first, you mentioned that you had some I don't want to say identity crisis, but you still wanted, you were trying to figure out what you wanted, despite of having an established life around you. And the second is that when that thought sort of came that you want to go back to school and choose your own path, when you wanted to choose your own path, what conscious choices did you have to make? Like, you knew that finances are going to change, for example. So was it that time when you had a chat with your husband saying that, hey, now you have to be the sole earner and you have to transition to a higher paid job and then I'll go back to school or something like that? So two parts.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess in reverse order, technically when we were in DC and I was teaching, and I was really happy in that job, and I still had always thought maybe I'll go back one day, but I kind of hadn't reached the point where I was done. I think if we had stayed, I would have stayed in that job a little longer. The truth is, the administration at the time with President 45 cut the funding to the NIH postdoc program, and so my husband had to finish and get a real job, his first real job, at the young age of 39. And so we kind of had the options of, and we thought we were staying in DC. We bought a house. That's where we were. And an opportunity came up back in Houston with his old PhD advisor, actually, to do a biotech startup, which is not the route he thought he was going to go. And I don't want to make this podcast about his science, but it was a really cool opportunity to kind of take an idea of his that he loved and see if they could make it work, and get it to market.
Awesome.
And so we were like, let's do it. If not, we'll always wonder, So then when we had made this decision that we're going to move, that was a huge catalyst to be like, okay, this is a great time to switch gears if I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So that was the catalyst. And then, as for specifics of how to do it, the first thing I had never taken the GRE because my master's program didn't require it.
Yeah.
So I first had to study for the GRE and had the vocab flashcards and all the things. And then, it was trying to study for the physics GRE, which failed because of COVID and they canceled it. And then U of H revised their policy and they don't really require it anymore.
Yeah.
So then it was kind of like, okay, I don't need to study for this test, but I still need to relearn all this stuff I've forgotten. So I actually, during COVID, I got on the MIT Open courseware and took virtually some quantum physics and some multivariable calculus and just the things that I knew I had learned but I didn't remember. So that's actually what I ended up doing all during COVID. Because COVID was, it was kind of a good thing I didn't get into U of H that year, in hindsight, because my kids were all home because they weren't allowed to go to school. So that was weird and crazy. But that is what I did to start reviewing. And then the next year I audited the undergraduate classes, statistical mechanics, electrodynamics, and quantum mechanics. And actually, I bought the book, the Griffiths electrodynamics book. And I literally went through the entire book on my own.
That's good.
And did as many homework problems as I possibly could. And
this was during COVID?
Yeah.
So in such a situation, what type of support do you need from your family and friends? and were your expectations met?
Yeah, you know, I feel like when I first started, I had the misconception that because I wasn't earning income, and especially at first during COVID, I wasn't even in a program. I was just trying to get in a program. I kept having this kind of voice in my head saying what I'm doing isn't as important as my husband's job, and he's bringing in the money, and obviously that is important. But I would feel guilty asking him for like, oh, I had set a goal that I wanted to finish this chapter and I'm not done. Can you do this with the kids or whatever? And then the truth is he did not think that way, right? I'm so thankful that he would remind me like, I what I'm doing is valuable, and it's not really about the end product. It's not about the money earned. It's just about like, we're both dedicating time to things that feel meaningful to us. Now, at any point in time, one of us should always earn some money. Yeah. But so that was really helpful, that we were like, to get on the same page of like, I'm dedicating my time to this. I'm going to dedicate 20 or 30 or 40 hours a week. And he's super supportive. So my expectations were, exceeded in that sense, that, because it can be hard in our society to value my own work if it's not producing a tangible, quantitative outcome, right? And so that has been kind of a challenge, but my family, except for my kids, they love me and they're great. But my 7-year-old yesterday was like, Mom, when are you going to get a real job? And I was like, I do have one. I'm getting paid this year. And he goes, yeah. But like, when do you not have to take classes anymore? And I was like, I don't know, man.
So talking about your kids, what is something that you want your children to know about this journey? Some of the learnings that you found along the way that you want your children to know?
I want them to follow whatever path they want to be on, as hard as they can. I just want them to be passionate about something. And when I used to be a teacher, my students would ask if I wanted my kids to be physicists. And while that would be fun, I could care less. I just want them to pick something and just go all in. And then if they change their minds and want to pivot, that's great, but go all in on the pivot. And that's like, that is my one, dream that I have for them.
That's very sweet. Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who is somehow in the same situation, who's juggling between family and grad school? And like you said that, like you came after all those years. What advice do you have for someone like that?
The big picture, that balance is, my advice would be to seek balance. So, and what I mean by that is, people say things like, well, what is your top priority, or what is your number one priority? And it's hard to, it's like, obviously my family is very, very important to me, but it doesn't mean that every time there's a need with my kids that I'm going to drop what I'm doing with school, right? Or vice versa. But that, so specifically, like I want to be present with my kids after school sometimes. And so, but that doesn't mean I have to pick them up at 2:30 every day. So we've tried to come to a balance where I can pick them up 2 days a week. My husband can pick them up 1 day a week, and then I can stay late 2 or 3 days a week. Same with like, letting go of, again, someone in my situation that is a 43-year-old mother. I want to make healthy meals for my family. I don't want us to eat, I want them to put healthy food in their bodies. And so sometimes I'm going to cook a really healthy meal, and sometimes my husband is going to cook a healthy meal, and sometimes we're going to have spaghetti with sauce and that requires zero work, and sometimes we're going to get Chick-fil-A on the way to the soccer game. And so kind of allowing for, just because we do it one time doesn't mean we're doing that every, it's again, balance. Just because I can get very caught up in like, I've set a goal and I'm going to achieve it. And, you know, you have to do all these things every day and read to each kid for 20 minutes and each kid needs to do these chores. And it's just like, and sometimes they just don't get done and that's okay. And actually when I went back to work after, I guess it was after my daughter, after my first child was born, and I went back to work and I remember my supervisor saying, you just need to embrace the fact that like you've got all these balls that you're juggling and you're going to drop some every day. Just the key is rotate which one you drop, you know. Right. It doesn't. Wow. And so that has been really helpful. Like one week the laundry doesn't get done, but next week I'll do it and we eat, you know, Chick-fil-A, you know, more than we should. And right. And if you kind of view it as a whole, then you're still kind of achieving and moving towards the goals that you have.
Very interesting.
It's very profound.
Yeah. So looking back all these years, if you could, would you change something?
Oh, great question. That's so hard because, you know, I feel like we've all, but I've made mistakes and, but I can't, I don't think I would change anything because of, you know, what I learned from those mistakes. Like I said before about, you know, my path through Latin America and back. I mean, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been working for the organization that I did that got me into my master's program, that got me to write my thesis on sex trafficking, which landed me in Houston, which is where I met my husband. You know, so I feel like I don't think I would change anything because I am really happy of where it's all led me to. So, yeah.
Let's see. What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self? My advice would be study. Go home and recopy your notes because then you will actually stop playing Tetris and go to the library and do your homework, and then you'll actually understand what's happening. I wish I had just done that.
And lastly, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, goodness. You know, I have a hard time with best because I feel like I have to have a perfect answer. But a piece of advice that has stuck with me that I think is applicable to all situations. And it started with just advice as a parent, but because sometimes as parents, your kids act in ways that make you think they are crazy or that you are crazy for raising them. Like sometimes they do things that you're like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? And feeling maybe guilt, like have I done something to show you or hurt you in some way that makes you act like that? And I remember someone saying to me, it doesn't matter why. That doesn't, I mean, in some sense, it's good to know why so you can fix the problem, but it doesn't matter even if you did do something wrong. What matters now is what are you going to do to fix it? And instead of kind of dwelling on the mistakes I've made and how could I have done that, and that can apply to anyone in any situation. It's okay, this is my reality, and what am I going to do now to move in a different direction? Even with, you know, taking tests and in class, there was in quantum last year with Dr. Ratti, there was a test that I did so poorly on and I was so sad about it. And just that idea of like, okay, I can't change that, but what can I change to have a different outcome? Well, the Einstein thing, right? Yeah. What can I do differently so that I have a different outcome? So I would say that's my favorite advice.
That's amazing. And that's a great note to end on. Thank you for doing this, Kristen.
Thank you guys. It was
Thank
very
you for sharing
fun.
your story.
Yeah, you bet.